Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. I just finished watching the real Hulk Hogan TMC expose. I don't really know what to call it. Like TMZ investigates the real Hulk Hogan. And as I was watching this, I was kind of wondering, is Ric Flair gonna get one of these? Like, who in the world of professional wrestling would be the next person that would pass away that TMZ would want to do a special on Fox that airs at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday? I was gonna watch this when I got home from work today. It just aired, honestly, too late last night. As I was doing my live stream, somebody popped in. We started talking about it, honestly, just a little bit. I gave my thoughts, and my thoughts, honestly, were 100% correct. This is not going to be good. I've watched a few of these. I've seen them pop up on Netflix, on Hulu. I've seen them on streaming sites where they have ones on the real truth about 9/11, what happened to the 9/11 plane that went down in Pennsylvania. They get you with these like headlines, and then when you get down to it, it's not even really what it was supposed to be about. I watched this today at work. Because I was listening to a Wrestling Observer that was from last week, because it was about the WWE to ESPN deal. Someone had uploaded it, and I hadn't listened to the Observer in a long time, and I really wanted to hear what Dave said about it. But then once they went to the Q&A section, I knew from being a long-term Observer listener that sometimes, like, they get you with the headlines that go into the stories, and a lot of times, like, the people writing in questions to Dave give you the real, like, fireworks of the episode. And somebody had brought up something that Dave wrote in his obituary about Hulk Hogan, about, all the things that sort of sporadically came up during his life. And somebody had asked a story about Brooks' record deal and Big Show's boxing career. And I immediately was like, this is not going to be good. But I texted Miguel, told him, and he'd asked me if I'd seen the TMZ interviews that have been rolling out, and I said that I had missed the show, and I found it on YouTube, and I ended up watching it on there. Somebody had gone through and cut out the commercials, and it was a real fast watch. But this, if you are a Hulk Hogan fan, is not something that you need to see. It is entitled The Real Life Hulk Hogan. It just should have honestly been, hey, do you know the guy that was in Rocky was a racist? That is horrible to say, but that really was it. I mean, they really didn't even emphasize on Hulk Hogan, the wrestler. It was just like, it immediately started talking about Hulk Hogan, how he was in Rocky, and how that blew up his career. And they had the talking head come in of Hulk Hogan basically saying that Vince McMahon Sr. fired him for going to make that movie and missing dates, because wrestlers were not supposed to be in movies. They were just supposed to be wrestlers. They weren't supposed to, be something that became larger than life. But they used that to bring Sylvester Stallone into the talk, and basically talked about what it was like with Hulk Hogan on the wrestling, a wrestler coming to a movie set. How was he on the set? And we would see sporadic talking heads pop up throughout the episode, from Mick Foley telling the story about, him going on the Canadian, like I used to like basically think they were the early days of shoot interviews, but there was a guy in Canada that would get wrestlers to come in when they were doing their uh, Monday Night Raws or Nitros or whatever it was, and they would come in. Hogan came in and basically took one opportunity to really run Mick Foley down, talking about like when Mick Foley was eating cheeseburgers, he was in the gym, he had a regimen for 30 years that he had worked out 2 hours a day. He was putting in the work, and I don't know if that was after Foley had won the championship during the Attitude Era, and like he was trying to find some way to knock WWF, like when Shivani said, yeah, that'll really put some butts in the seats. But Foley talked about when they had done an when they had done an A&E show, and Foley and Hogan sat down for the first time, which would be the last time they interacted in Hogan's life. He took the opportunity to apologize and say that he was saying some stupid stuff at the time, and he was just kind of like wrapped up in the wrestling war that was going on. It didn't take time to actually know who Mick Foley, Cactus Jack was, and he wanted Foley to know that he really did mean something to the wrestling world, and everybody has their place. But I mean, like I just was astonished. They talked about Hogan's wrestling career in like a moment. Said like the headlines about him going to WWF. I don't even think they brought up WrestleMania. I think they talked about him, you know, turning into a bad guy with the NWO, thinking that, you know, merchandise sales were actually going to go down, and he was taking a hit, and they actually improved because of how big WCW became because of the NWO at the time. But this thing sucked. As a wrestling fan, as a Hulk Hogan fan, I'm not saying that what they were talking about wasn't real. But like to call it the real Hulk Hogan and then just hit on the facts of like, hey, Hulk Hogan made a sex tape. They didn't even bring up who was in the sex tape with him. They didn't bring up how the sex tape came to be. Bubba the Love Sponge was never mentioned, that him and his wife set Hulk Hogan up as like a sting, as like their back pocket retirement plan to release this tape. I don't know if it was supposed to make her a bigger star in the long run, but out of everything, like 2 stories came out of this. The Hulk Hogan sex tape was released, and that became a huge story. And then I want to say like a year later, we actually heard like the conversation that was on the tape where Hulk was overheard talking about who Brooke was allowed to have a relationship with, and the words that he used. Vince McMahon did a sit-down interview. I actually thought they were going to use the Vince McMahon interview that is going to be released on the Netflix documentary, but I don't think that is true. Maybe they were able to actually get him to sit down the same time he was filming the Netflix documentary, but it looked like he was having an actual conversation with Harvey, the main guy from TMZ. Oh, I don't even know if the first scene, there's no way the first scene of the TMZ thing where they find out that Hulk Hogan is dead inside of a meeting, they, you know, push. I mean, that makes them look bad more than anything else. Harvey's in a meeting and he asks if anybody has checked up on Hulk Hogan, and he picks up the phone to check on Hulk. And then some guy comes running in and he says, Hulk died earlier this morning. And Harvey immediately goes into, we need to get the story out. He goes from somebody who looks like he cares about Hogan to call and check on him to just we got to get this story out first so we can get the clicks, we can get the advertising money. Let's one guy in there has written 150 words on Hulk Hogan. How do you write about Hulk Hogan's death, talk about who he is in 150 words, and they immediately go to, I don't need to proofread this, just publish it? Obviously, that guy has worked there for a while. That's a big story for it to be on his desk. What if he wrote some shit in there that they didn't want out there? That's what didn't make sense to me about them just saying, like, instantly publish it. I don't know how you film a scene for this documentary and make it look like it's real and like it really was shot the next day or whatever it is, but if that's the way things operate at TMZ, I haven't watched the TV show, honestly, in a long time. There was a time period when it came on at like the dead period of night that I used to watch the show. I think it came on after the local news here, and it was like I need to be going to bed. I need to be watching something stupid anyway, so I'll watch this, and kind of got hooked up into watching it and realizing who the people were on the show and stuff like that. But Mark Henry was on there, and he talked about how Mark Henry talked about Rocky, and like he's like, who didn't see Rocky? Everybody in the country saw Rocky. And he talked about how much he cared about Hulk Hogan. And then when the tape was released, he went to Vince McMahon and he tried to make a plan. Like, I know how to make this go away. I will help Hulk. We will go out, and go to different black colleges, and we will reach out to the people, let them hear the apology, let it come from the heart, let it be real words. And Hogan said that he had been instructed not to talk about the tape anymore. I don't understand how. I mean, I've talked about this 1,000 times, and it's going to ruin this video. The point that I do not understand why Hogan didn't take every opportunity for the rest of his life to apologize for that, to try to find a way to put it behind him. Because look, the man's been dead for 3 weeks now, and you can't say Hulk Hogan's name without wrestling legend / racism attached to his name. Vince McMahon's own words were, he said some racist words, but he was not a racist. How does that not make sense? Jimmy Hart told the story about helping Kamala get paid more when he was on the road working with Hulk. Why isn't there more stories about, Bad News Brown or any other black wrestler that Hogan trying to reach out to try and help them make more money? I don't know. Like, I wish there honestly was. But if I can stop one person from watching this show sucked. And I've watched a bunch of these TMZ investigates. When they pop up, they're trash TV at the best, and I watch them. But how can you really say the real life of Hulk Hogan? They had a pop-up of Lynn McMahon, an old tape, basically saying that, like, when that tape was released, she didn't know about it. She didn't find out about it until it became mainstream news. And how could he be running around and doing that behind her back? When that tape was made, they were either past the point of separation or they were divorced. I can't really remember exactly where it was, but that's why the tape was made, was because Linda was with somebody else who was definitely around Nick's age. I think it might even have been one of Nick's friends. And Hulk was saying that he needed to hit it because he needed to get back on the scene. He was looking for like a rebound jump to get back into the game. So like, he knew how to do it with somebody else. I mean, like, I'm not going to say I watched the tape, but I'm just going to say, like, I remember the stuff that was in the tape. Fuck it. I watched it once. It is what it is. But, I I don't know, man. That thing, I'm not going to say that I'm going to like, it's going to ruin my life and I'm going to think about it for the rest of my life. But definitely, there ain't no other way to say it. That, as a documentary, sucked. That was not the real life Hulk Hogan. How did you not make it at least an hour longer? It makes me like cringe when I think about the Netflix documentary that's going to be coming out. And at least Netflix is in bed with WWE, that they're not going to put out like a total death sentence. I mean, like, even the Vince McMahon documentary, like, they talked about what happened to Vince and why Vince is not in WWE, but it didn't really come out until like the last episode of the documentary. When you talk about Hogan's career, you got to talk about WrestleMania, WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3, the Mega Powers collide, him trying to pass the torch to the Ultimate Warrior, going out and making No Holds Barred, Mr. Nanny, Suburban Commando. Maybe you don't talk about his movie career anymore after that. That point, you jump over to what happened at WrestleMania 9. Him leaving WWE and going to WCW. Him starting the NWO when people got tired of the red and yellow crap and they realized it wasn't going to work anymore. And that's why Vince thought that he was past his prime and, it was time for him to leave the WWF. Then, get into the point of like not running WCW into the ground. Maybe you touch on what happens with Vince Russo. You talk about him coming back to WWE in 2002, and then, him, having the runs where, he comes back because of Hogan Knows Best for WrestleMania 5, WrestleMania 6, him going into the WWE Hall of Fame, maybe touch on the fact that he tries to help out TNA. That's how you make a Hulk Hogan documentary. Then you bring up what happened in 2016 with the sex tape and what happened from there, and then you can say whatever you want to about the end of Hogan's life, and then basically say that he tries to become a businessman in Florida. He's got the restaurant. He's got the 2 beach shops. He's opening up the shop in Pigeon Forge. Maybe I should make a Hulk Hogan documentary. That sounds pretty freaking easy to me. This thing sucked.